that. Joining me now is former senior State Department and CIA official Ned Price. Good to see you, Ned. So, Netanyahu said that his plan to take over Gaza City is the speediest way to defeat Hamas and end the war. This plan has been widely condemned by the international community, and it would force the evacuation of about 1 million Palestinians. What would the escalation of Israel's war operation mean for the humanitarian and famine crisis there? And, of course, the efforts to free remaining hostages.
Well, Alex, in short, nothing good. You heard from Molly. You said yourself, this plan is engendering a lot of consternation on the international stage and the UN Security Council and capitals around the world. But I think we also have to recognize that it's engendering a lot of concern within Israel itself. Israelis took to the streets overnight once again to protest this plan. Earlier this week, 600 senior Israeli security officials from the IDF, from the intelligence services, other elements of Israel's security apparatus called for an immediate end to this war. And if you look at the potential implications for this further occupation of Gaza across every single one of Israel's interests, you see that it does the opposite. It doesn't end the war. It certainly doesn't bring home the hostages. It doesn't take the IDF out of harm's way. It goes without saying that it's only going to exacerbate the humanitarian plight of the Palestinian people. But I think what we have to also recognize here is that while it works against every single one of Israel's broader strategic interests, it actually works to the political and legal interests of Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. And that's my concern, that the prime minister is not acting out of what is in his country's manifest self-interest. He's acting out of what is in his personal, political, legal interest. He wants to stay out of jail as he faces corruption allegations. He wants to keep his coalition together. And even this, what his coalition, the far right in his coalition, is calling a half step, even that is making it more difficult for him to keep his coalition together. As long as the war continues, Bibi is in a better political and legal spot, and I'm afraid that is what he is basing his decisions on.
Got to say, you're not the first person to articulate that sentiment just in the last couple of days. But let's talk about the past week in which President Trump said it's pretty much up to Israel whether to fully occupy Gaza. The White House also said it plans to increase humanitarian aid in the Strip. Netanyahu said today he's discussing this with the U.S. Can the administration, though, Ned, both support the expansion of the war and alleviate starvation in Gaza? I mean, what do you make of the president's pretty much hands-off approach to Israel?
These goals work at cross purposes. There is absolutely no way that an expansion of this war could alleviate the obvious suffering of the Palestinian people. And the idea that the United States, as was floated by senior U.S. officials earlier this week, needs to take over or get directly involved in the humanitarian operation, I think makes a mockery of the partnership that the United States has with Israel. The simplest solution here would be, one, to end the war, to surge humanitarian assistance, to bring the hostages home, as basically every ceasefire formulation has called for. Barring that, the United States needs to lean on Israel and say it is unacceptable in terms of international law, in terms of your positioning in the diplomatic sphere, but also in terms of our bilateral relationship, that you are seemingly intentionally inflicting the suffering and starvation on the Palestinian people. We have a lot of leverage with this Israeli government. The Trump administration has a lot of leverage with this Israeli government after what has happened over the past 6 months with Israel, with the region, vis-a-vis Iran. And it's time for the Trump administration to really say, you must increase humanitarian access. You must put an end to the suffering and starvation. And beyond that, it is time to bring this war to an end.
Let me ask you a question on Russia regarding the Ukraine war, of course, because Trump has given Russian President Putin a huge diplomatic win, agreeing to meet with him in person in Alaska. That's Friday. By the way, American soil. Trump also preemptively signed a peace deal that would involve Ukraine ceding territory to Russia, which President Zelensky's rejected. So we know Trump is thirsty for a deal, but do you see him demanding any concessions from Putin? What else does Putin want besides Ukrainian territory?
Yeah, quite the opposite, Alex. I don't see him coming away with anything in our interest just yet. And quite the opposite. I think what gives me such great concern about what may happen, what may unfold on Friday, is that on at least two major fronts, President Trump has already caved to Vladimir Putin. You'll recall that Friday, this past Friday, was supposed to have been the deadline for Russia to stop its killing, to stop its bombing of Ukraine, to declare a ceasefire or face secondary sanctions for those doing business with it, and tariffs. Of course, we haven't seen those yet, and it is unlikely, I think, that we are going to see those, certainly in the near term. Second, it was when this was first floated, the White House said that one of the preconditions of a meeting between President Trump and President Putin would be that President Zelensky of Ukraine, would be included. President Trump seems to have caved, seems to have dropped that demand. And as of right now, President Zelensky has not been included. This is not a discussion of bilateral interest between the United States and Russia. What President Putin and President Trump plan to discuss is Ukraine's territorial integrity, Ukraine's land, Ukraine's independence, its sovereignty, and its democracy. And for Ukraine not to be included and for President Trump to have caved on that so quickly, it really gives me a great deal of concern about what President Trump will say to President Putin when President Putin gets him in the room. We've seen this movie before. The first time didn't end well. I'm afraid this one won't either.
And let me be really clear, because I misspoke. President Trump has not signed a preemptive deal. He has signaled a preemptive deal. So got to be clear on that. You're very clear on your points. I appreciate that always, Ned. We'll see you again soon.